Caitlin, take it away. Good morning. So today we shift gears a little bit. So we move away from doing sessions into doing something called JSON Web Tokens. We'll see what that's all about and why would you choose this over cookies? What are the problems that this technology aims to tackle, right? And some of you probably tried wiring up the front end to your server yesterday. And what you found was that going across domains with cookies is kind of hard. I don't have a solution for that. What I have seen people do is they serve their React application from the same domain as they serve their API. So basically, you just have your Express, you build your front end, right? Either using the command from Create React App or whatever build system you're using. And then you serve using something like express.static, you serve the folder with your built React application from your Express API so that they all run from the same domain. And in that case, cookies would just work. Now, if you need to go across domains, there are hacks. There are, I don't want to call them hacks, but there are things that people have come up with that you could do. I just don't know a good solution, so I could not explain exactly what can you do that is secure to go across domains with cookies, just because I'm not an expert at that stuff. Okay, so how can you then go across domains and still be somewhat secure? Well, tokens is what services like Google or Facebook or GitHub or Twitter or any other social authentication system that you can use. Like if you wanted to add the ability to your front end so that people can use their social identities to log into your application instead of you having to save a username and password, what those companies use is what is called a token. And there are different technologies for tokens. We're just gonna cover one of those. It's called JSON Web Tokens, and it's fairly universal. Like a lot of ubiquitous. It's out there. A lot of companies use it. Okay. So the idea for today is understand the anatomy of the JSON Web Tokens. How does it look like? What is it really? And how do we use it in our backend today? And then tomorrow we talk about the front end. There is one other thing that I want to cover before we start, and it's we started the week asking, should we compress the week into 3 days and then have this Thursday, the 4th day, to cover other way of doing this using something called OAuth? But then there was maybe 4 or 5 people that decided that was not a good idea, so we respected that, right? And so we're gonna go with the week the way that it is. I think I found an alternative. How about since we have flexibility on the backend project week, how about we do like an optional at the end of the day, kind of 1 hour get together, and we talk about that there. Because that way you can concentrate on the content of the week now. You concentrate on testing next week. You forget about that. And then when it comes project week, you have your, we start the week, and then we cover that as an extra, something that if you want to add that to your project, then you could participate on that lecture. Let's not call it a lecture, let's say a conversation about how to add social media using one of the services, either Zero or Firebase Auth. And then we also have a conversation on the 3rd day about deployment, okay? So that's going to happen on backend week so that you have an idea where we're going. So I wouldn't worry about deployment now, just because you need to concentrate on learning what we have now during the week, because we're going to cover how to do that on the project week. So that's the announcements out of the way. No more news. So let's see if we have any questions. Anybody be kind enough to open the questions there so that we can have that open and I can keep an eye on the questions, please. Thank you. Zach, helping. There you go. Thank you, Zach. All right. So if we don't have any more questions, let's talk about this JSON Web Tokens thing. You're gonna hear this called JWTs. J-O-T. I have no idea why, but so if you hear people talking about JWTs, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about JSON Web Tokens. There is some information about this here. I'm gonna move quickly through this because I want to show you how to wire it up on the project. Hopefully we can do this without having to go the full 2 hours. We'll see. But there are some links that you'll find in the material there when you know on Training Kit. One of those is, remember that article, The Anatomy of a JSON Web Token? I asked you to give it a good read yesterday. But I want to go immediately to this JWT.io website, because this is going to give us a nice starting point, right? They have, of course, an introduction that you probably read about it, hopefully. But then I'm going to go into this debugger first. Clicking on that debugger brings us to this window. So the first question is sound check and font size check. Font size check. So that's looking good. Cool. All right. If not, just tell me, hey, bump it up a little bit. We can do that. I always check every day because, I don't know, maybe you switch monitors and now it's not as easy to read. With JWTs pronounced JWTs. JWTs, by why they call it JWTs, I don't know. I just heard it called JWTs for some reason. I have no idea why it's called that. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna take away from this is a JWT is a string. It's a simple string. There's no magic to it. It's just a string. So this right here is a JWT. That's a token right there. It's a string. And this string has two parts. Think of it as you have three pieces, and then you concatenate those three pieces together by using a dot, putting a dot in between. So the three parts of a JWT, of the JWT string, is the header, the payload, and the signature. So if you want to compare this to something, it would probably be kind of like the cookie, okay? It's a medium, it's a container of data. How this works, you could read about it. You know, there are basics for encoded, but in order to use this, you don't need to go into those details. What's important here is that you need to keep this secure, same way that you do with the cookie. And there are a few important differences between the cookie and the JWT. The cookie, the browser, by default, is going to be sending the cookie on every request to a website. Now, which cookie is it going to be sending? And this is where the going across domain thing, it's kind of tricky. Let me show you. Here, if we go to the application and we go into cookies, you will notice, look at the website. The website is, you know, JWT.io. If we go into the cookies, the only cookies that we should be able to see are those that are on this site. It's a good thing that we saw this here, because I'm going to tell you something about this. This is a security problem right there. So JWT.io, these are all the cookies that they set for us. There are quite a few of them. Now, part of the code on this page, there's probably somewhere in there, there is one of those tweet this buttons, and that tweet button is also adding a cookie. And this cookie is coming, you visited this website, and without you saying, yes, I'm okay doing this, they are setting a cookie from Twitter. So let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like this is creepy because you're doing something on a website, maybe you're looking at, I don't know, games or something, and then all of a sudden, I don't use Facebook, but those of you that use Facebook, all of a sudden you start seeing ads on Facebook related to that game that you were just visiting. And you're like, how does Facebook know? Well, this is one of the ways. Because you visited a game site and they allow Facebook to place cookies on your browser so that Facebook can track the stuff that you're doing using that cookie. And that's scary. Okay? So, yeah. Be careful. All right, anyways, so if you go to JWT.io, you see that these cookies are related to this website. If you go visit another website, you shouldn't see any JWT.io cookies because the browser controls that. They have put a lot of effort into making sure that cookies are really, really secure. And whenever I do a request to this website, whether I want it or not, this cookie collection that I have here, all of those cookies are going to be attached to that request. And the browser is going to do it automatically. When it comes to tokens, though, it is the responsibility of us, the developers, of the client, in this case, whatever application, like this application, would be responsible for holding on to the token, remember that string, and sending it whenever the client decides, sending it with the next request. So that's not going to happen automatically. This is a really, really important distinction. Remember that. It's just a string, and it's not going to be sent automatically for you by the browser. Your application needs to have code in there somewhere that is taking care of that, that is picking up that token and sending it on every request. Now, there are other ways of storing data on the browser, right? We saw that the cookies happen automatically. You remember that when we going through the to the database week, we saw that this IndexedDB and this WebSQL, and that, I think that website uses WebSQL. WebSQL is a way to have a database here on the browser. I wish I had the link. Try editor. Let me see. Is this it? Yeah. I got lucky. All right. So if we go into this website and I go into the application, you'll see that there is this WebSQL thing that was not there when we were looking at JWT.io, right? There's no database here. But on this website, though, there is a database, and you can explore that database. Look at that. Categories, customers, look at the data there. So this is actually a small database engine running on the browser, okay? The other, I told you that I thought it wasn't working on Firefox. Apparently, they already decided to support WebSQL because IndexedDB was the other format that Firefox and the Mozilla Foundation was pushing. I think Google may have been pushing the WebSQL, but at the end of the day, those are just two different ways of having a relational database stored in the browser. And this is how this website works. They actually have a full database engine for SQL. This is why we can run queries against it, running on your browser. It's pretty nice. Now, there's this session storage, and this is going to live as long as this session is alive. So when you close the page and come back in, this is whatever information you saved there is not going to be persisted. In the case of the relational database, though, this will. So if you go and make changes to this database, and then you come back to the website and visit it again, those changes are going to be there because this is something that's being stored in your computer, in your browser. Now, local storage is another way. Look at this. W3 schools is storing, well, actually they don't have anything, but if we go, let's say to, let me see if these people are storing anything in local storage. You'll see that, look at that. They're even allowed to the application Twitter to store information about our in local storage for me without me knowing or telling them that I'm okay with doing that. So JWT.io does a lot of use of local storage. And if you go to GitHub and you do the same thing, and I'm showing you this because you're going to see a lot of, you shouldn't use local storage. There are a lot of the, well, GitHub seems to be okay with it. Microsoft, Google, the big websites, they all use local storage. The problem with local storage is, what do you use it for? If you're going to be saving information that is supposed to be protected, you shouldn't have it here because look at this, I'm reading this now. So if I go to the GitHub, I could see exactly what they're like bundle URLs. If I click on that, the content of that is there. If I click on this, this is what the content of that is there. So logged in, true. Look, they're using this little flag on local storage to know whether I'm logged in or not. So that means that if I go and log out, this is probably going to be false, okay? So local storage, session storage, some kind of relational database, and cookies are possible ways to store information on the user's browser. And the browsers are pretty good with this. Like any information that's in there, it's going to be related to your, to your instance of the browser. So another browser cannot access this. Another website cannot access information from GitHub. Like they cannot go into the local storage that GitHub has. Browsers take care of that, so we don't have to worry about those. Questions about that? This is going to become important tomorrow when we say, what do I do with the token? Because I just said your application, your client, your React application is going to be responsible for sending that token back. So where do you save it? There are different places where you save that. Oh, look, there's an error on this page. All right. So going back to the tool, we said that a JSON web token has three parts: the header, the payload, and the signature. And the signature is how the server knows, because the server is going to give you a token, it's going to give you React application, your client is going to give it a token back. Instead of us relying on the library, just sending it as a cookie like we did with Express Sessions, we don't have that luxury anymore. We have to actually grab the token or use a library that will grab the token and send it back automatically to the client. And then the client is going to receive that token and save it somewhere. We will be doing that using local storage just because it's really easy to do and a lot of people do it, right? I'm sure there are other ways, like maybe in the headers, you could probably save it as a header, but having a local storage is a little more common, let's say, way of storing the tokens. Now, if I have the token on the client and it's just a simple string, it's going to stop me from going and modifying that string. Nothing, right? You could go and change it. Now, the thing is that when you send that token back to the server has a way to verify that the token is good. And that way has to do with the signature. The signature is how the server knows that the token hasn't been tampered with. Now, the token is just as the server originally produced it. And we'll see how to do that. Don't worry about it. Now, what's important here is that this payload portion of this is a key value store that we could use to add things. Like you can see right now, they're adding this name property of John Doe. Remember how we added to the session the username or the user ID, and that ended up being part of the cookie? And then when the cookie came back, already had that. So the library will decode the cookie, unencrypted, and save that on the session. So I had access to that on any other endpoints after that. It's the same thing. In this case, we call it a payload. So I know this is a little esoteric, so we're going to move quickly into the code. Just know that this is a string that has got three parts that we can add. We have this object that we can stick information in called the payload. And then the server is going to use the signature. We're going to use a library for that, of course, to verify that the token is good, that it hasn't been modified in any way, so that we can trust that any information that we have on the token is the information that we put there. All right. So let's get rid of this. Let's take a quick look at the project and then go into code, right? Because we want to make sure that we cover everything that we need in order to finish this project today. So 2 parts, again, part 1 for Wednesday. This is the part 1, and then you have part 2 for tomorrow. Okay, so part 1 is, again, we're going to build the same endpoints. The difference is, instead of using sessions and cookies, now we're going to implement this using JSON web tokens. Okay, that's it. So that's the only difference. And we'll see how to do that. And then tomorrow, you're going to use Create React App, and you're going to wire up a front end, and you're going to work with the back end that you built today. So you'll start today and finish that tomorrow. And then, of course, there is a stretch problem, but we're not going to worry about that. Okay? Questions about the project? Other than, I don't know how to do it yet, Luis. You'll learn today. The first portion of it. Okay. Let's see some code. Okay. We continue working on the mini. So if you have that mini there and you've been following along, excellent. You can continue working on this. So what I'm going to do, so that we don't lose all of the stuff that we already have there, like all of those endpoints, I'm going to take this file, I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to call this sessions. So all of the code that we had to work with session is still going to be in there. And we don't lose that. Okay. And then I'm going to create a brand new file called index.js. There's nothing here, so I'm going to go into my all sessions file and copy all of that code and then just clean it up a little bit. So let me show you how to do it. And then you're going to go back and do the same thing. All right. So we don't need session anymore. So I'm deleting the session related stuff, like the session store, all that session. We're still going to use a big crypt, so we're going to keep that in there. Let's see what else we have here. We have the session config, so we can delete all of that because we're not going to be using sessions again, right? So delete that. We could keep course. We need that because I'm going to cross domains tomorrow. And then the register, we're still going to hash passwords and all this, but we don't need these sessions anymore. So we're going to remove this portion from here, no sessions. On the login, we're not using those sessions, so I'm removing that. On the users, we're reading from rec.session.id. We're not going to do that anymore. So in here, when I do get the users, we're just going to send the users back. So I'm going to get rid of all this and just keep the users for now. Okay. And if you want, I could just, after I clean it up, I'm just going to give you that and you make that the content of your index.js. So you don't have to be deleting stuff. And then on the logout, we no longer have a session to destroy. So this is going to be a tricky one. The reality is we're not going to be doing any logout on the server. So I'm just removing that totally because we're not keeping anything on the server anymore. The server is going to be stateless, the communication between the server and the client. We do have this protected, only that we're not doing anything with it yet. So for now, we're going to remove it from, actually, we're going to leave it there and then just call next. Okay, that's easy. Just call next so that everything works. And then we're going to come back and see how can we make this work and still protect our resources. In theory, I'm going to test it out and then I'm going to give you the code. Let's see if that works. Stop it. Make sure that everything's fine. John start. Let's see. We made a lot of changes. Are you okay? And if everything is fine, we should be able to hit our users. Login users. Let's try that. And we should get the data back because we're just calling next. All right. So it seems like the application is working. Let's go on trying to do a login. And we get, yep, welcome, Jonathan. And of course, we have no logout. So there's no goodbye. We could get rid of this. Don't save. So login works. Register user works. Let's go and register a brand new user. Let's see if we can do that. Do we have Vera in there? I don't think we have Vera in there. Nope. So let's bring in Vera with a password of really secure password. Let's see. And yeah, user 4. All right. So it seems like all of our endpoints are back. They're working fine. Vera should now be there with the ID of 4. There she is. Very nice. Ready to go. Let me drop this on Slack for you. Code snippet. Grab that, and please let me know when you're ready to go. Again, don't delete the code that you had there. Just rename that file to sessions, and they just create a new one for index.js. It's a nice password. Let's see. All right, looks like everybody's ready to go. There's no unknowns there, so let's continue on. So what do we normally do? We go and find us a library that is going to help do this for us. Going back to JWT.io, you will see that they have a section, debugger, but they also have this libraries section here. So the team at Auth0, they have been dealing with security for a long time. That's what they do. That's all they do. Their services are related to security and authentication and authorization and all that. And they have written a lot of libraries for different languages. So if you go to libraries and filter here for Node.js, in this case, they have a library called JSON Web Token. And you could click here to go and view the repository on GitHub. And they have information here on how to use it. Okay. What is this? Implementation for Node.js. Okay, cool. So they have how to use it, you npm install it, and they have some properties that, and we're gonna see some of those properties again, how to set them up. So let's do that. When I say let's do that, I mean, watch me do it and then you go and do it, right? So yarn add JSON web token, all lowercase, no space, none of that. Okay, hopefully no errors, everything is good, restarting, yep. So now we have JSON with tokens. So the first thing is required it up here, of course. I'm gonna say, hey, hey, come on. Wait, I hate it when they break. All right, so we're gonna call this job. I'm gonna bring job from JSON with token. There you go, very nice. Now we have it, so we have access to this. And we're gonna use the same thing with the express session. There are a couple of methods that we want. We want a method to be able to generate a token once we have a user that is logged in, and then we need another way of verifying that the token is correct, that still it hasn't expired and that nobody touched it and try to modify it. Well, I have it. It's just so somehow it broke. I have been playing around with the extensions that I have, and I think I installed one that's supposed to kind of synchronize across different devices, but I don't know, something went wrong, terrible wrong with it, so it kind of broke my stuff. I'll do it later. So now that we have the library, it's because I'm getting some help from I mean, it should be there. Let me show you, just in case some of you haven't used user snippets. They're a good way of doing this. So you do JavaScript. Look for your, because you have for JavaScript React and you have for JavaScript, and mine is down here, like no get route, test case, just suite, post route handler, and I have this one. It's called rem. It's supposed to be working, but it's not for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's related to that extension. I'm gonna uninstall it and reset the whole thing to see if that works. Okay. So a good place. We're gonna start doing this on the login. We're gonna produce, because we already know that we can register and do that. So on the login, we used to have here, after we know that the user is logged in, we used to produce our cookie or a session, add information to the session here. So this is also a good place for us to go and make a token. So what I want to do is I want to somehow generate a token. I want to generate a token for a particular user, right? So I'm going to pass in that user that I have there. In this case, we can also use the username if that's all we want to save. So let's simplify it a little bit and just say, well, actually, I'm going to leave it as the user because I want you to see that. So generate a token. This is what we're going to do. And this is going to be a synchronous operation also, because we can't continue until we have that token anyway. So we're going to make this be a synchronous operation. So at the end of running this function, what we should have is a token. A token sounds like also like a Japanese wine. What is the name of that? Sake. Toke. So token. Now we don't have this function. Let's go write it. I'm going to write it up here just to keep the code close together. Then you have it on, of course, on some extra library outside, and then you bring it in. Function. You see me do this. This is an artifact so that we don't have to scroll a lot, and you could see the code that we just wrote together, okay? And since I'm using the word function, this could be placed anywhere because it's going to be hoisted, right? Technically, it's not really that, but you think of it as it got hosted to the top, so it's going to be available anywhere. So I'm going to generate a token. I'm going to grab a user. I'm going to get a user sent as an argument. And then in here, we're going to produce a token. And of course, we have this library, and this library has a couple of methods. As I said, you could go and check out the documentation. We're going to scroll to the documentation and see how that's done. So just see me do it right now. So let's say that I'm going to return from here a token. So I'm going to say JWT. And the method to create one is called sign. Remember that the signature of the token is what kind of gives us a sense of security, because we know that nobody touched that token. So they call the method, instead of like create or something like that, they call it sign. So sign takes at least 3 arguments. The first one is, what's the data that you want to place in that document? And they call that payload. We're going to call it the same. We don't have it, but we're going to create one in a minute. And then the second one is, how do you protect it? Well, there's something that only the server knows, and that would be the secret. So we're going to cap that secret. We could call it JWT secret. Let's do that. Let's call it JWT secret. And of course, the library is going to use that and say, this is how I guarantee that this token was produced by the server, because only the server knows this secret. Okay. And then after that, a third argument would be, do we have any options that you want to set up? So let's call it JWT options. And since we're doing that, why not just make this JWT payload at the same time, right? And JWT payload, JWT secret, and JWT options. So we don't have any of those. Let's go and create them. So the first one is, what would be the payload? Well, in my case, we could just pass the user. I mean, that would be enough. So I don't know if I just want to have this be the user. For now, let's have them here, separate. So that you know that you could say, well, this is going to be an object. It's going to have the user. Maybe we could do this. Like everything that's on the user and hello. As a way to illustrate, this is just a regular object. Okay, you could have all the data on the user and even more. So you control this. And this is something that you can do. Doesn't mean that you should always do it. So the same rules of the cookie apply. This is something that the client is going to have access to. They can see it, and they can read it from JavaScript. They can see that the information in there. So make sure that you don't have, like in this case, I'm going to be sending the password as part of the user, but you don't ever want to attach anything that is supposed to be private, like any sensitive information, credit card, passwords, none of that goes there. So, and only the minimum that you need in order for your server to work correctly. Let's add something like, for instance, role, and it's going to be admin. Okay, we could check for that later, that the role is admin. So that's the payload. So they have the payload. Now the secret. Well, I think, did we have a secret? We deleted it. Okay. So let's go and create one now here, but we're going to need to extract that out, and you'll see why. So, but first we start here, minimum viable product. Okay. The JWT secret is going to be, and you could have a randomly generated string. This could come from somewhere, but for now we're just going to have, you remember that? No dots. just for the fun, right? Nobody touches a dwarf. So we have that. Extra points if you know where this is from. And even more points if you know what happened later when, you know, that same dwarf told someone else, you know, toss me. And the person is like, are you sure? Because of this, right? Because of this. And then he answers something else. All right. So now we have the secret. And then how about some options? Oh, let's create some options here. Again, there are a few options that you set on this. In our case, we're going to care about the expiration. So we want to control that. So we're going to say expires. And let's say, I don't know, 30 minutes. You could do things like 1 hour, 3 minutes. There are quite a few options and quite a few ways of setting those options. So if we go back down here, have the usage, and you have, where are the options? options. There we go. The different algorithms that you could use, the audience, the ignore not before, the max age. You could say the max age, or you could say when it expires. You have the timestamp. Let me see, what else do we have? I think I want to go and check. Oof. Let's go to npm.js if it's easier to read there sometimes. Do you know that YouTube went offline yesterday? Makes me feel better when I have bugs on my code. Like, you know, if YouTube goes offline, I'm okay. All right, so here it's easier to read here, right? So expires in, you could do things like 7 days, 10 hours, 60 days, and even milliseconds. But I find that it's easier just to write it in as a string like that. It's pretty nice, right? The audience, the subject, the ID of the token, if you want to have an ID for that token, all of that you could set up there. So now we have the expiration date. Another one that we could have is an ID if we wanted to, but that's good enough. I'm going to say this token is going to expire in about 3 minutes. Actually, let's make it a minute so we could see the expiration working. And that's it. Okay, we have a payload, a secret, and the options. We pass that to that sign, and this is going to give us a token. We return that, and now we can use that token down here. We have the token. We're not doing anything with it yet. So what we do is welcome the username, and then we're going to pass the token here and return it on login. Let's go back and give it a test. Let's go back to the login. Change this to Vera, because you know, we used Jonathan yesterday a lot. Ooh, error. Haha. Let's see, what error did I get? What am I missing? Token, right? Token user. Bcrypt, compare sync. I have no idea. Let's see. I don't see any problems. Spelling error? Did I do expires in? Do I have an error, you said? I think I switched the letters. There you go. Thank you, sir. That error was not helpful at all. Let's try that out. See, that was a problem. Like, you expect that you get a nicer error. Okay. All right, here we go. So we got the token. Let me show you something that seems scary, right? And it is kind of scary. I'm gonna take that. Now, just copy the string, okay? And then I'm gonna come in here into the debugger, and these people don't know my secret. So they shouldn't be able to look into my token, right? Right? And then again, I paste that, and look at that. The ID for the username is Vera. Here's the password. Here's the hello. Here's the role. All the information on the payload happens to be available, even though they have no access to my secret. Hence, we insist that you don't place any information here that is supposed to be private. Now, what you will notice, though, is that even though the page that created the same library that I used to sign the token, they can see into the payload, and they can also see the headers. What they cannot see, though, is a way to make this token valid, because they don't know the secret. So the signature for this token right now would be invalid. If I try sending that, it's going to fail, okay? It's going to fail on the server. The server is going to say, nope, this is an invalid signature, because they don't have our secrets. In order for them to be able to decode that and have a valid signature, they need to know the secret, and that's held on the server. But the data is visible, okay? Remember that. Man in the middle for you, not man in the middle attacks. Cool. All right. So now we know that we're sending that token. Now let's use that token and see if the token is valid. Then we're gonna take our middleware that we wrote yesterday. We're gonna modify it to check for the validity of the token before letting the users go into the user's endpoint. Okay, so first, please go and bring into your project the JSON with token library, require up there, and then go into your login and make sure that you have both this token generation. Let me see if I can compact this somehow. Make it visible for you on one screen, or just break it and put it on the right here. So this is the function to generate the token, and on the left here we have the function for the login. See if you can read it there. They're both there. So this is a new line, and then this whole function is brand new. And of course, we are returning the token down here too. And please let us know when you have finished this and you have tested it and you're getting the token back from the server. Cool, we have questions. Yes. So how does the logout look like then if we use tokens? We'll see, Patrick. I'm going to keep that on the back burner for you. Not yet, but you'll get the answer today. Don't worry. So that token stuff looks like a lot like what was going wrong on YouTube yesterday. I haven't read what was going on, but I will. But I don't know. We will just see the welcome on the token, right? Yep. So all you should be getting, let me show you real quick, and then we'll come back to the screen. You should be getting something like this, right? The welcome, because this is what we're sending, and then the token. That's it. You're correct. In your opinion, which is better, sessions or just tokens? Depends. It always depends. I don't know. I don't want to give an opinion. I like the concept of tokens a lot, but I realize that people have problems with security with it. Like they think cookies, since you don't touch those and you can make them that JavaScript cannot touch them, they feel more secure. I don't know. I don't know. So what do you use, Luis? Well, if I can serve from the same domain, I would go with cookies. If I have to serve from different domains, if I'm going across domains, I will go with just because I don't have a good way of doing that using cookies. Maybe sometime I will learn it, but I don't know it right now. So I just default to tokens in those cases. Is this function, the question says, is this function custom middleware? No, it's not. Remember that custom middleware would have request, response, and next, and then we use it as middleware. This is just a pure regular function that gets a user and returns a token. That's all it does. So no middleware, just a simple function. So how would we get a front-end application on the same domain as our backend? You have your server. It's got a couple of steps depending on the technology. In the case of React and Express, you build your front end. It's a conversation maybe that we could do. Okay, let's see it tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to talk about the client. But if you may remember, when you use create React app, we use yarn start to run the application, but there are other options that you have there, like eject to see the configuration. One is called build. So when you say yarn build from the create React app application, it's going to generate a folder called build, and that's a deployable version of your app. It's going to have index HTML, some JavaScript files, and some assets in there, CSS, anything else that you add. Or anything you need to deploy that application to production, ready for production, minimize, and all that, it's already on that build folder. So what you do is from Express, you have a way, there is something called express.static, like this. And there are different options for this. And one of those is you could serve a whole folder. So what you would do is you say, hey, Express, if someone comes to this server and is not going to any, and this is one of the reasons I like to have /API/users, like to separate anything that's related to the API from the front end. You could say, if you don't find those routes, the very last thing is just serve this folder, and I will send the whole React application to the client. So that's one way of doing it. So that means that on the same port, you have access now to deploying your client and your server running on the same domain. So comments on the code. I could try that, but for me, this is a philosophy, right? I try to have my functions named in such a way that comments would be redundant, other than saying this is a new line that we added. Like, it would be really, really hard for me to add a comment to this line that would explain what this is doing, other than it's generating the token. I mean, there's really nothing else that I can do there. And then if we go into the function for generating the token, where's my function? Up here. It's kind of, I really don't know what else to add here, other than, this actually returns a token. JWT signs the token, and it needs a payload, a seeker, and some options. Like, I don't know how to add comments to that will make it clear. Some other pieces of code, though, I see your point, but it's kind of hard. What I suggest, though, is as you type it, write it in your own way, something that will make you remember what this line is doing, if it's something that is not immediately obvious for you. Because that way it's something that it's going to trigger you remembering. Okay, let's see where we are. We only have one person still working on this, giving it a test. Then as soon as we get that into the yes, we can continue and see something else. There's an error there. Apparently there was a typo also, just like me. Learning from the master, include a typo. Error 19, SQLite constraint. Looks like you're trying to create a user that already exists. So it's the username is unique, so you're probably generating a new user, trying to register a new user with the same username. So just use a different username. All right, so we're ready to go. Okay, it's about 9:56. We have about 5 minutes to take a break. So let's go quickly and implement this. Then let's take a break, and then you come back and work on it. And then we answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so the idea here is, how do I verify now? Because I want to take this protected middleware that we wrote yesterday, and we want to change it to check the token instead of doing sessions. Turns out that our library happens to also have a method that can check the validity of the token. So let's just do that. Now, there's one more piece of information that you need to know. How is the client going to send the token back to the server? And doesn't have to be a particular way, but the industry as a whole has agreed that we want to have that as part of the header. And the reason for that is any device or server, or even your ISP that's in the middle there, it's going to have a hard time picking at the headers that they're going to have picking at the body of the request or the parameters. So it's a good idea to use a header to send that authentication information, that token information, that string. Remember that the cookie is also string, and it was also sent in a header. You just didn't have to do it manually. In this case, we're going to expect that our server is going to receive the token as part of the header. Now, there is a particular header. It doesn't have to be that, remember, but it's the one that most people will use. So I would say go with that, right? It's called authorization. So we need to read that. So we're going to say, we're going to grab the token from the authorization header. So we're going to say const token, and this should be on the request in the headers, one called authorization. Now, if I do have a token, I need to validate that. If I don't have a token, though, I don't even need to validate. I just need to bounce the user right out. I could say, hey, res.status, you are not authorized because you have no token. So that we could see the difference in the response, we're going to send a message or something saying that there is no token provided, right? No token provided. What you would normally want to do is you want to say you're not authorized. I'm not going to tell you why, you're just not authorized. Right? It's the same idea of you don't want to reveal that the username is bad or anything like it. You just want to say you're not authorized. But for us here, we want to see the difference between not having a token and having a token, okay? Now, if I do have a token, is the token valid though? Let me make sure that I get rid of this next from here. If I do have a token, is it valid? So we need now to check for that token. And the library has a method called verify. And we could call verify passing the token. Now the server needs to know what the secret is. So I want to pass the secret to it. And then I'm going to get a callback that has the error first callback. So the first parameter of this callback would be the error, and the second would be like the decoded token. So we, at this stage, If nothing goes wrong, we're gonna have access to the whole token. So we could go and see the stuff that we have on the payload. We could read it. So it will look like this, right? That's our code. Now this secret though, we defined it in here, the JWT secret. You could read it from wherever it is, or the environment, you could read it again, and that would be okay. In our example, we're just gonna take this and just place it outside. Just place it outside of the generate function so that it's on the outer scope and everybody have access to it. Okay, now we can use it from this function, and then we can also use it from down here. So this is called JWT secret. And we can see it because it's in the outer scope. And then in here, if we land it here and we have an error, that means that the token verification failed. If we don't have an error, that means that the token verification succeeded. So we have access to the token. So in here, token is valid. In here, it means that token verification failed. This is how the library is going to tell us that the token was tampered with. Somebody trying to change that token. Now, if we get that, we're going to bounce them, of course. We're going to say invalid, invalid token. You're trying to mess with my token. But if we are here now, we're okay. What do we want to do here? Well, we could call next for sure, so that you continue. But we can also, if we decided to do things, we could read from the payload now, and we could add things to our request object. So we could do things like request that user or token information, whatever you want to say. You could say decoded token equals to the decoded token. We could do that. So now, just to make sure that we can have access to this request a decoded token, let's just console log that out inside the users here. I'm gonna say console.log the decoded token, and that should show up there. I like to also have a string here so that I know what I'm looking at. Okay. So what we're saying is, when somebody logs in, they're going to have that token. So when later we come back and visit the users, this is going to go through that protected middleware. Get rid of this. It's going to go through the protected middleware. And I hope that if they are successful in logging in, they're going to land on our endpoint here, and I have access to this decoded token information. And I'm console logging it so that you see it, but then we could use it here if we wanted to, okay? Now, how this works is, we're gonna grab the authorization header. This is important, it's gonna be on the headers. I'm gonna check, do I have the token? If not, I'm gonna say no token provided. If I do, I'm gonna verify, I'm gonna use the library to verify that, passing in the token that I got from the headers, the JWT secret that we moved outside into the outer scope, so they have access to that. And then if it fails, it's going to fire up an error. I'm going to check for that. Token verification failed, say invalid token. If I do have it, I took the decoded token that the library is giving me on this callback, and I place it inside request.decoded token. And then I'm calling next. By calling next, it will now hit our endpoint. So let's see it in action. And then, of course, we're going to take some time to answer questions after the break. So first thing is, we have this token. If we go to users now, no token provided, right? We haven't sent that token yet. Now, let's try sending this token right here. So let's take this token. Remember, we gave it an expiration time, very short. So my guess is this token is already expired. So how do I send a token through Postman? Through Postman, it's easy because we have this headers area here. So we go into the headers. See that we have this content type, but we can also have this authorization header here. And look how Postman knows that there is an authorization header that we can use. Never mind that this is uppercase at the beginning. It's fine. It's going to work with lowercase on Express. And then here I'm going to drop that token that I just copied, right? The whole thing, the string. That's it. So we go to the headers, add authorization here, and just drop the string for the token on this side. And now we go from no token provided to it's an invalid token. And we expected that, right? Because that token already expired. So let's go and log in again to get a brand new token assigned to us. Now let's take that new token though, go back, replace this whole thing with a brand new token that we just got, send, and voila, we have access to our users. So how do we guarantee that nobody touched it? Let's say that someone goes in there into that page and wants to change the username to someone else, or change maybe the permissions to admin or something else, and they change that. What's going to happen is that this string is going to change. It's going to be totally different. So if we go and take that Y and make it a 4 or something like it, like I just changed from the Y to a 4, send that, and the library is going to tell me, hey, you modified my token. That's no longer valid. So if we go back, make it a Y again, send that. Yes, this is a good token. So this pretty much provide a certainty that nobody has touched the token, that it is the token that I sent, and nobody changed the data in it. So the data that's on the token, I kind of trust implicitly as long as the token is valid. And if we set an expiration date, it's going to be respected. As we saw, the old token was invalid because it expired. And all that happens automatically by just using the library. So let's take a 5-minute break. And I know you have questions. So let's take a 5-minute break, come back, answer questions, and have you work on this and try to implement it yourself, because more questions are going to come out of that. So I'll see you in about 5 minutes. All right. What to do? Let's go back. Beep, 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 beep. All right, so let's go and start working on this. And of course, yes, no. Let us know when you're done. We now work on this protected down here. Remember to move the just secret to the outer scope, so you have access to it from this function. I want to see questions now along the lines of, you're going to be copying the code, but I want you to understand what you're doing more than just copying it and pasting. Oh, by the way, I did not show you this, but we console log the token. As you can see, the terminal has that token, has access to it on the endpoint. So you could see how we have all the information that we had in there, and some other information that was added by the library, like when the token was issued and the expiration date. All of that is available for us on subsequent endpoints. Yeah, testing is tricky. So let me do a quick demo. Everybody else could continue to work. This is for Michelle. So you go back to your Postman, and then on your users endpoint, when you're doing the get, make sure that you go into the headers here, and then add a brand new header here. Originally, what you will have is just that, right? Just the content type application JSON. So you could write here, start writing authorization, and just select it from the list. And then just take your token, right? After you log in, you get this token back, copy that string from here, and then just paste it there. So if I want to do it now, I would just log in, okay? Copy the string because this is the token. I'm missing the E at the beginning. Copy that, and then just go back to your users and paste it here as the value for that header. And then we can send, and you'll see that it works. And if you make any changes to this, it should break and tell you that the token is invalid. And if you remove the authorization header altogether by clicking that X, it should tell you that there is no token provided. So log in, copy the token, you go to your endpoint, go into the headers, add authorization header, and then just place the string as the value there. Oh, the quotation marks don't go there. Yeah, that's a good point. Notice that I'm copying only the string without the quotation marks. Yep, good point. Thank you, Tom. So look like this with no quotation marks. Back to the code. Okay, so there is an error there. Let me take a quick look at that. In the protection function, what are you doing? I don't see the else. This else right here. Michael. Also, there's a typo there in rec.header. It's supposed to be rec.headers with an S right there. Austin saw that. So Tom saved someone there by reminding them to get rid of the quotes. The register endpoint, yeah, for sure. Let's go. We haven't touched that though. We haven't made any changes to the register yet. It's exactly as it was yesterday. Where did I place the just secret on when testing on Postman? Clint? Ah, oh yeah, I just made it available by placing it on the outer scope. So jot secret is not defined is because we originally defined that inside of the generate token, but then we moved it outside, right? So that we can have access to it from any of the functions now inside the file. That's a JavaScript issue there. That's not an authentication issue. So move the definition of the just secret outside of the generate token function, out into the outer scope. It's just the little things, right? Like a few little moving parts, and next thing you know, you're broken and you don't know why. Yeah. I know I always say something along these lines, but this is new information and there's quite a few moving parts. So we are okay to not remember all of this, okay? I don't, for sure. I always read the documentation whenever I need to teach the class just to remind myself, oh, what is the name of that method again? Oh, verify, right. What are the properties that I need to pass in? So there's a reason I'm awake at 6:30 in the morning every day before class. I'm just making sure that I go through the documentation again and kind of take a look at this and remind myself on all code that I have in there. Oh yeah, this is how I use this. And if you ask me tomorrow, I may not remember. If you have good memory though, you might, but I don't. We talked about this error yesterday. I think we even we had a note somewhere of this error on handle rejection, this thing. We made a note and we dropped it down here. Anybody remembers what that was about? On handle rejection error. Remember that? Let's exercise some memory now. Yep, that's right. Remember that I protect myself by having this else always? So remember that whenever you see that error, something is going on in one of your endpoints or middleware where you have things like this, right? You say, I, I, I know that if I get down here, that means that everything is fine, so I don't need that else. Sometimes you do, okay? So let's say I have this if, and you will see a lot of people write code like that, like, if this happens, then whatever is in here is going to happen. If not, then I'm going to fall down here. But then they forget that they need to have some kind of returning here. So way to fix that would be to have a returning here. I have seen other people also just add a return right after that. So if you see example codes doing that, that's the reason. It's because they run into that error, and their solution is to just have a return. Same thing if you had other code in there that you needed to stop execution after you're done there. Otherwise, this is just going to go through that and then go down here and try to set a header again. And it's going to be like, you already did that. So this is why we have that error. So my solution is to, every time I have forks in the row like that, I protect myself by adding an else. Good memory, Clint. I would not have remembered that. See if you're missing an else or something like that, or maybe you have some res happening after that is outside. See, let us know if you find it. Or you could just place the code in here and we could take a look at it all together. So, oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, no. There's no patience. This is just stuff that it's hard to do. So ask as many times as you need. So when running protected, that's another question. Recta headers authorization is undefined. Any idea why? Who can help me out there? So what happens if this is not defined? The way that we have the code set up, it should return that there's no token provided, right? Because we're saying, do we have a token? If I don't, we're going to fall into this else. So that's what should be happening. But why would this be undefined? It's one of the fundamental differences between cookies and tokens, right? They should not be blocked by Helmet. Helmet is not going to block the authorization header. It shouldn't. Helmet is not that bad, right? So it may be that we're not setting the header when we're making the call. So make sure that you're typing this correctly here and that you're passing the data, right? Maybe a typo here on the authorization header when you're passing it. Or you're just not passing the header, and that would be okay. That would be the right thing to do. Say, hey, you didn't give me the header, so I'm going to return that you didn't provide a token. So size solved the problem by also removing that next. Remember that next we had out here? If you have that, it sees that and then it goes to the next. So while this is happening, this is also going to try and happen. So that's where you get that. You can also get that error that way. Protected is not going to run before the login. It should not, because protected is just a middleware that we define and we're using it locally. It's not a global middleware. And we don't want it to run on login. The reason we don't want it to run on login is because you don't have any authorization. The whole idea of the login is so that you could get that token the first time around. So this is not going to be protected. That makes sense, Travis? Yeah. Cool. All right, so when we run a test, what is the content type key? Good question, good eye. What is this? Who sets this? Oh, this is a way for client and server to agree on what the data format they're going to use is. In this case, it's application.json is one of the valid ones. So whenever we do a post, remember that we do this, right? Let me duplicate this to have another post in here. We go into the body and we say it's going to be raw, and we set this here to JSON. If I change this to be text plain, for instance, right? If we go now into the headers, you will see that the content type was modified by the tool. This is Postman doing that. It's reacting to what we say the data is going to be. Now, what happens is when you do a request, you send that header to the server, and the server sees that and says, oh, I'm going to be getting some JSON. So it expects that you're sending JSON. And this is the content type sending back. And then you can also set a header called accept, like this. And that could also be application.json or a number of other headers. This is more into the HTTP protocol thing. Let me copy this. And this is a way for the client suggesting to the server saying, hey, this is the data format that I expect to get back. And the server, in some cases, is going to respect that. Some cases, they're just going to say whatever. But you can now, on the server, go and read the accept header and say, oh, they want JSON, so I'm going to send back JSON. But maybe they want XML, which is another format, right? Application.xml that looks more like HTML. So the server can choose and say, hey, if they say that they want XML, I'm going to send them XML. But if they say they want JSON, then I'm going to send them JSON. So the server may or may not, read that header and respond to that by sending the right data. It's just things that you could send from the client to let the server know what you want. In this case, though, this is the client telling the server, hey, what I'm sending you, the type that I'm sending you is JSON. Very good question. So the comment is the test works without it. Yeah, in the case of the get, right, you're doing a get. You're not really sending any data on the body. The thing is that I copy that from the login. But when you're doing a get, you're not sending anything. So you don't need that at all because there's no content type. There's no body on the request. So this should work. Well, it's going to say that it's invalid because it expired already. But when you're doing the login, though, if you do that and then you go and remove the header, it probably doesn't work. Like if I do that and I send that, now I have this error saying I couldn't read anything on the body because I don't know what it is. Even though I'm sending my data, see how now the application is not aware of what it is. It sees it as text. So I need to add that on the post because I have some information in the body. Then I need that header in order for it to work. That's a good observation too. Now you're learning about HTTP also. Nice. Okay, so looks like, do we still have any errors? Let me check. Good to go. Checking on Slack, see if we have any errors still. If not, we're just gonna do a quick review and maybe play around a little bit because we have another 20 minutes to go. Okay, looks like everyone's good to go. So let's do a quick review of the things we have kind of touched on today. JSON with tokens is just a string. It's got 3 parts. Our library, we use a couple of methods. One to create a token and the other one to verify that the token is still valid. Okay. We saw that the way that the application, the setup that we had with sessions, the library itself took care of attaching that as a cookie and sending that cookie back to the client. But when you're working with JWTs, though, you're responsible for grabbing that token that the library gives you and send it back to the client yourself. And we are sending it as part of the body so that the client can read it quickly from the body and then store it somewhere. We haven't done that yet. We're going to do that tomorrow when we talk about React. Right? We're going to do it in the context of a React application. But essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to grab that token, that string, and we're going to save that somewhere. We could save it on the app. We could save it somewhere. We're going to use local storage. And we also saw that the industry kind of recommendation is that when we send back that token, though, instead of sending it back in the body of the request, we send it as a header.
No.
I don't know. Someone got unmuted. So, but whatever happens, no, don't do that. No. Okay. So that string is going to be sent as a header called authorization. So we could grab that and check for the presence of that to make sure that someone at least is giving us a token. And then we could verify that token by passing some parameters like, here's the token, here's the secret that I used when I created that token. And then we have this callback function, and this error is going to be fired if the token verification fails. And if not, then we're going to get access to that token. And then we can use that and we could place it on the request so that other middleware or route handlers can use it from there. And we have done that. So if we go see that token, though, we'll notice that, let's go and do a quick, I'm going to do kind of a play around exercise with you now. Send this, invalid token. Let's go and log in again. Actually, let's go and change the length of those tokens to make it last long. Where can I change that? If I wanted to make that token last more than, a minute or two, let's say that I wanted to last an hour, where can I go and change that? Yeah, we could go into the options for that and change the expires in. So let's go find the options. Right here, say 1 hour instead of 1 minute. Save that. Now my tokens are going to last an hour. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay. Sending that. We got this 1 hour token now. Copy that without the quotes. Thank you, Tom. Authorization header. And we're going to replace that old token that we had there with a new one. Send that. And here we go. We have our users. Let's go look at the terminal, though. See how we have in the terminal now, hello, and the role of admin. And that role is part of the token, so I don't even have to check the database anymore because it's already there. This is one of the powerful things of JSON with tokens as opposed to having sessions, okay? The server, my web server, can scale better now because as long as every instance I can have 20 servers. It doesn't matter which of those 20 servers the client hits, it's okay. As long as all of the servers know how to decode that, they share the same secret. So this is going to scale a lot better because the server doesn't have to keep anything in memory. Now, if you're using sessions though, if you're storing them in memory, you always have to hit the same server because that's where the session is. If you're using an external database, that means that the database is gonna have to handle all the load, right? Because every time a client makes a request, the server is going to be hitting that database to go and check the session information. So the server has to work harder, either the database server or the Redis server that you have or the web server. When in the case of tokens though, since you can implicitly trust that nobody modified that role in there is the role that you put there. So you can trust that and you could check for that. So let's say that we take this protected middleware that we wrote here, and it's got this resin next. And we're going to do another one. We're going to say, this is not part of the lecture today. This is just because we have some extra time. Let's touch up a little bit on this. Check role. And then this is going to get a role, right? And look at this. I'm going to return a function instead. And this is the function that takes the request, the response, and has the next in it. But I have this role. So whoever's calling me is going to give me a role, and then I'm going to return that function, and this is actually the middleware that I'm returning. Okay? And then here I'm going to say if the role happens to be admin, then it's okay. Then you can go ahead and continue to this endpoint. So I'm going to call next there. Else, we're going to bounce. And I'm going to have a photo 3 now. This is different. This is forbidden. I know who you are. I don't care. You cannot access this. So even if you're logged in, even if the token is valid, you're still forbidden from accessing this resource, right? So I'm going to say, we're not going to do sir because it may be a madam, right? So you have no access to this resource. That's what we're going to say. Or maybe just say, what should I say? You shall not pass, right? Shall not pass. Here we go. It's a little different. It's almost the same, but it's a little different. Now I'm checking the role. Here. Now, you would say, yeah, that's nice, but actually, where is this role coming from? How are you going to pass it? Well, it's going to be here, but what we're not doing yet is how do I check the actual role that we have, right? There's something wrong with this. Where's the role going to be at? Why is this getting unmuted? So your job is, as you watch me write this is what I want to do. What is this role truly coming from? Not this role, but the role that, yeah, it's going to come in the payload. Very good. So what are we missing? If you look at the code up there, what are we missing down here? If this is going to be some middleware that is going to work like protected, what should we do? Help me out. Yeah, what's going to be as a middleware? That's correct. But if I'm writing this middleware, why is this? Okay, so let me do this. Manage participants, mute, and now nobody can unmute. There you go. What I really want to do is I want to check like this. I'm going to say whatever the role on the payload, let's say now this is probably looking a little better for you. Let's say that you call that check role middleware passing the role of admin. What you really want to do is you want to say, hey, check the role inside of the coded token to make sure that it's the same as the role that I'm expecting. And if that's the case, I'm going to call next. That means that I need this. How can I get access to this decoded token? And that's the missing piece that I'm looking for. Yeah. So Brian says, well, that would be nice. We can have the first middleware check for the token and do the verification and take care of extracting that from the authorization header and doing all this and placing that on the request. So if I use this after I use the protected on the same endpoint, I can assume that there could be a decoded token, right? So I can now check and say, hey, if I have this, if I have it, and the role inside that happens to be the role that I'm looking for, then you can continue. Otherwise, I forbid you. So what he's saying is we can compose those two middleware together on an endpoint, only in the cases where we want to check for a role. So let's go try it out, okay? I'm gonna say, I want people to come into the, we could close this. Remember, this is gonna place this decoded token on the request for me. So I'm gonna go into the users endpoint and say, not only, is it down here? Where's my user? Oh, here it is. Not only is it protected, but also I wanna check that the role happens to be admin. And now my endpoint, it's clear, like it's okay, it is protected, so they have to be logged in. And even if they're logged in, I want to check for the role admin. And I can call this as a function like that, and that's going to give me back the middleware. Remember that? It's returning a piece of middleware. But in order to return that, that middleware is going to react to that role that I pass in. So I'm passing that role in here, and I'm returning the middleware. And I'm checking, when it went through this only is going to call next so that this code executes only if they're logged in. Otherwise, they're going to be bounced from the protected middleware. They're not even going to get here. But if they are logged in, then I place that decoded token on the request, even though I'm checking just to make sure, because maybe there's an error here, right? So I check for that and I say, okay, I have a decoded token. Now, the role on that decoded token, though, that role property right there, is it the role that I'm looking for? This admin role. And if it is, because I'm passing it here, the function, and if it is, then I'm going to call next. So this is when we land now on the next piece of middleware, which is our route handler. Otherwise, I'm going to say, yeah, you're logged in, but yep, you have no access to this. This is the forbidden error, forbidden code, 403. I'm going to save that, and let's go and try it out. I do have a valid token. So I should be able to go to the users and get my users, right? Because I'm looking for the admin role that this user happens to have. But what if what I'm looking for is the role of, I don't know, root? I'm going to save that, and I'm looking for that root role now. Send that, and I get you shall not pass. You are forbidden. Because your role is admin, it's not root. So this is a simple, really simple implementation of kind of a role-based authorization workflow, where you have your users have some role. Those role, this could be an array, right? This could be an array of roles. So it could be something like, you remember where we are saving that payload? We just happen to be doing it manually here, but this is going to come from the database. The user can have a collection of roles instead. So this user could be an admin, can also be root. Okay. So now we change that to have both roles in there. So we're going to call this roles now instead of role. So in here, we're going to check, and I'm going to say, hey, the token roles that includes the role. Just JavaScript now, right? Includes this role. So now my users have a collection of roles, and I'm checking, in this case, I'm checking for the root. So if we go and hit that, should be includes of undefined. No, that's not, it's called roles. I left it at role. Roles, decoded token roles. Let me see. Wait. Why is this still role? Did I not change that? Roles. Any typos that you see there? Right, that decoded token roles, still roles. Protected is not changing anything. No. Okay, let's try it again. Maybe it wasn't running. Okay, let me see. Cannot wrap includes of undefined. So let's do that. Let's console log this here on the protected. Strike this out. Let's see what we have. Let's see our decoded token. Make sure that I don't have a typo somewhere. And you love when we have to debug things live. Okay, let's try that. And let's see what we have. We have, oh, I still have role. Yeah, that's the problem. Role of admin. Let's see. Okay, I think our server may be broken, so let's go and restore that. Because obviously we're setting roles instead. Let me see. Know your role. All right. This is why people never want to do live demos of things that they haven't not planned on. Oh, come on, really? I'm still getting that? Oh, yeah. Makes a lot of sense. What am I? I'm using the old token, right? I'm not using a new token that has the roles information in it. Psh, come on, Luis. You know this. All right. Yeah, we have been using the same old token. Remember that the token has information inside, and that's not going to change dynamically. So I have to get a brand new token with the roles instead of the old one that I had. So that's on me. So now when we use a brand new token, make sure that this is CUL. There you go. We send that. Yep. Oh, we have a new one. No, not the one. This one. All right. Here we go. Now we have one of the roles that we're looking for, right? We have it. Now, if we change that to be something else, check role of other, save that. Now our token no longer has that role. So we should get it you shall not pass. Don't necessarily have to understand what we did there, but I'm going to give you the code so you have kind of a basic implementation of something that could check for roles on the user. And you can imagine now that these roles, I'm setting this manually, but you can imagine that that's going to come from the database though, right? You have your roles and the users, you're going to assign roles to that user. So in this case, I'm saying that my user has admin and root. And now I'm checking for that. And you have two pieces of middleware. One of them is saying, if you're not even logged in, there's no reason for me to check for roles or anything because you're not logged in. And then after I said that this is protected, then on the cases that I need to check for roles, I would say, oh, and by the way, for this particular endpoint, you also need to have this role. And if you don't have it, you're not going to get access to that. So you saw how we are composing middleware as part of this flow for this endpoint and checking for roles that way. We have a few minutes. Questions? We have like 2 minutes. No questions? Excellent. Okay, so go play around with this. I'm going to drop this code in here. And work on your project for the afternoon. Last chance. Any comments? Anything you want to say? If not, thanks for helping me debug. And I'll see you tomorrow.